Hi, Jodi. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you could be here with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you.
I always love the listeners to get the opportunity to know you on a deeper level outside of whatever work you're doing, or maybe it's tied together. But do you have a word or a phrase that you're embodying in this season of your life right now?
Gratitude.
Hmm.
That is a word that we are really leaning into in our home in a more meaningful, intentional way, and how that may serve us and others, um, you know, throughout our days and our time.
Do you feel like that word sparked up more acutely just recently, or is that something that you've been working on for a while?
So, as a family, we've been really working on different ways we could be more mindful. And my daughter's 12, and mindful can mean a lot of different things. And so to give her a tangible tool, gratitude is one that has really gravitated well in our home. And with the beauty of gratitude, the gift of gratitude is you can approach a situation as your cup, half empty or half full. and um and just taking that little baseline throughout your day as you're approaching different decisions or perspectives. um it's just really it's converted well for us. And I think too, I love hearing my daughter come back from school, and maybe it's that she was like, "Oh, I smiled at someone who opened the door for me." Like, I want her to have that level of, like, presence and awareness and consciousness, and gratitude is one that we can all just really align with very simply, and yet the tentacles of gratitude are huge. And, of course, I'm obviously passionate about holistic skincare, and gratitude is another mindful attribute that can benefit you and skincare.
Yeah. Well, here at the Energy Fix, we talk all about the power of this kind of concept of vibration and frequency. And gratitude is something that completely can change the level of how you're feeling. It can pull you out of bad moods. But I also know, and I speak this from my own personal experience, when life is hard, it can be really hard to stick to gratitude and to stick to pulling ourselves out of some of those lower emotions, you might say, right? So,
Mhm.
what kind of things might you do for yourself to keep yourself into gratitude, to maybe practice more self care so that you can embody that better?
Yeah, we call it staying in the sage at home. And you know, we have a couple words that we use to help, whether it's like curiosity or empathy, empathizing with yourself, empathizing with others, being curious in a situation. So perhaps the situation is challenging and you're not feeling like you really want to conquer it. Well, what can you be curious about in that moment? What is a potential gift and opportunity to something that's bad that's happened to you, or at least feels like it was bad, right? Something happened and you're like, oh, this is the worst thing that happened today. Well, perhaps there's a gift and opportunity in it and giving you a different perspective, or, a challenge that's in front of you and you can like navigate or innovate. And so we try to just simplify it in those terms for, my daughter, in terms of how to stay sage. And of course, and I'm gonna go even further with this. We have a acronym that we use called shaman. And so this is our holistic consciousness, like, tool. It's our compass, our North Star. So S is sleep. And so we're always talking about adding to the sleep bank, making sure that we're getting a good night's sleep and we're off of our devices early. And, if we do sleepovers over the weekend, thinking very mindfully of like, okay, I'm going to be pulling from my sleep bank because it matters. It helps you maintain that mindset. And then H is hydration. So making sure that not only are we drinking water, but we're choosing our beverages carefully. And for my daughter who's, constantly being exposed to different drinks that, like from Gatorade to soda pops and all the things, being mindful of that. But then it's also skincare. There are ingredients that provide hydration. There are foods that provide hydration. So when you start thinking of it in that context, you know that you're serving your body well in this holistic way. A is antioxidants. So just thinking about your food choices and how it may serve you, whether it is, fruits and vegetables or what have you, but then also again, your body care. There's wonderful opportunities for you to bring antioxidants onto this largest organ of your, this largest organ called your skin and give it nutrients. M is mindfulness. So that brings in the gratitude and the different things that we were talking about. The last A is avoid. So avoiding things like parabens, phthalates being plastics. I mean, phthalates are the number one producing chemical on the planet. The US produces 1 billion pounds of that alone, and that's an endocrine disruptor, and that disrupts your energy flow, So when you start thinking about the things to avoid, and then for my daughter, sugar, just being mindful of if you're not a part of that relationship with your food, the end of the day can happen and you have no idea that you've just intaked so many different sugars or chemicals or what have you that are inhibiting your ability to just be healthy, be present. Um, and then N is nutrition, which really dovetails well in that. And so it gives her and some autonomy of just a simple reminder of some of these things that will serve you in a holistic way. And it's not just about, I think in the past we looked at food as, whether it's weight loss or you're just someone who cares more about natural ingredients. And I really want her to understand the depths of this holistic skincare, holistic nutrition approach, and how it can impact your consciousness and your presence and your happiness.
Mm. I love that acronym, and I love how you explain that all out because really all of those pieces that you just said are about you connecting into that deep holistic wellness, which, if people are into working with shamans or working in shamanistic practices, that's really what you're doing is connecting into that deeper wellness, those root causes of who you are. And I feel like that was just this beautiful tie together with a beautiful little bow on top. So thank you.
You bet. It's fun to find ways to simplify something that is sometimes feels overwhelming, especially being inundated around us, and finding that relationship where you can really lean in without overwhelming yourself.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you talked about where you're at now, but let's talk a little bit about where you were. Can you tell us a bit about you, your journey, and also what brought you to birth out the work that you do now?
Wow, it has been a journey. So I got my master's in health psychology. I was pre-med. I was in the first health psychology graduate program in the US, and at the time was training resident physicians in the biopsychosocial model, meaning rather than just giving a patient a prescription, really looking at the patient as a whole person, and perhaps there was other lifestyle changes that could be made to help support the medical intervention to improve the outcome. And of course, now fast forward, we'll call that integrative medicine, but that wasn't the case, and that wasn't being, taught in medical schools at the time. And I was also very passionate about psychoneuroimmunology, which at the time was considered kind of hokey. It was anecdotal data in terms of perhaps there was a relationship between your mind and body, nervous system, and immune system. Of course, now we've got some really great data to support that, which is really exciting in terms of having more research to give light to how we may be able to be more involved and empowered by our health. And then at the same time, my sister was going to herb school and became a certified herbalist, a midwife. And she started learning how to extract from plants in this very sustainable way. And so we started making these medicinal salves, topical therapeutics. And we were really impressed with the results. And, sort of we had this like light bulb moment, and I was looking in my first aid cabinet, and I was like, oh my goodness, we live such a clean life and natural cleaning products, natural beauty and personal care products, eating organic foods. And I'm like, but I have all these chemicals in my first aid cabinet: Neosporin, hydrocortisone, calamine, all the things, tons of plastics, tons of one-time use. And I was like, why am I making this exception? And so we started looking at this. We're like, oh my goodness, we're not alone. The natural consumer was willing to abandon their natural ethos because they were told that the traditional chemical laden products were the only products that could get the job done for wound care, eczema, and these chronic skin conditions. And then the conventional consumer was really interesting because they didn't care about the ingredients. But what they did care about was the efficacy, and they were really disappointed in the efficacy and the performance of these products. And what we discovered is that topical or chronic skin conditions are at an all-time high. But the OTC first aid space really only addresses acute skin conditions, saying use this product for 7 to 10 days, what have you. Symptoms persist. Do not continue using because it will cause like massive damage, internal organs, and go see your physician. So it was this inconvenience of like, now I need to go see my physician, and or it was an expense issue, right, to go see your physician. And so my sister and mom and I were like, can we make plant-based first aid solutions that are superior in efficacy? So this is not the natural consumer aligning with this. This is, can we make superior efficacy, reduce the waste, bring sustainability, plant-based solutions, and maybe bring some fun to a category that really like could use a little playfulness. And so Green Goo was born. And that's where we really started, was looking at making first aid solutions that were plant-based, good for you and good for the environment.
So why do you think that first aid, and that can be anywhere from ibuprofen to, healing a wound. Why do you think first aid is one of the first places to really go when it comes to somebody choosing that instead of their natural lifestyle that maybe they're so used to choosing? People get organic foods, maybe they are looking for healthy skincare products for the shower, but when it comes to first aid, I feel like that is one of the first places to go.
It is, and there's so much to unpack there. That's such a great question. One, I think, these chemicals that we've been introduced to are really only in the last 100 years, like this century, the Industrial Revolution. What we're doing at Green Goo is an old world process that's been around for a long time. It's just been lost. And the Industrial Revolution, with good intentions, brought manufacturing and scaling of products. And we didn't have Amazon and same day delivery. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have the transportation. So there needed to be preservatives. And there was this perception of like the more volume you had in a container, the better value you had. So some of that was just a filler. So, fast forward to this moment, natural products, I'd say, really only became value or became something that we were talking about in the last like maybe 15 years, right? Like in a more mainstream way. And the natural products were following the same production process that the Industrial Revolution was doing. So, yes, they were using more natural ingredients, but they were still needing different preservatives. They were using extracts. The process was still the same. So I don't think that the natural products that we have been exposed to over the last 15 years, that their process was going to perform and have the efficacy that it needed to in order to give the results. What's unique about Green Goo is the process. So we make most of the ingredients ourselves. We bring the plants to our manufacturing facility. We take them through the extraction process, yield high amounts of these medicinal properties. And then the custom oils go into these products. And it's a combination of the fact that we're not using extracts where there's a ton of dilution. We're not bringing in these extra ingredients that may prevent the efficacy, and we're also having this high concentration combined with the and we'll talk about this when we talk about CBD, but this entourage effect of the plants working together. So like plantain alone has, some medicinal properties. Yarrow alone has some medicinal properties. But when you put yarrow and plantain together, they work synergistically to improve, the oxygen and blood flow to the wound site and then elevate the healing process. And so by combining these special combination of plants, then you're creating the fuel, and then using plant-based oils, like these oils that we select are oils that your body loves to absorb. So they're really oftentimes people think that the oil is like the call it the lotion or the moisturizer or the lubricant. They're really serving as the transporter. They are the transporter of these high concentrations of herbs that your skin loves to absorb. So you can actually get a systemic response from these herbs versus, we have parabens and petroleum that are being used, and those don't don't get absorbed in the same way. Like petroleum oftentimes will sit on the surface of your skin, leaching some of its properties, but it prevents the medicinal properties from really being able to go into your skin in a meaningful way, which also provides hydration. And I mean, even plants like aloe and calendula are high in the hydration component, which, hydration is key.
Is part of your shaman.
Right. Which helps
Spe
us when we formulate.
Speaking of part of that shaman, before we get too far away with this, I find this so interesting because I never even thought about oils being that transporter. Um, but I want to address maybe some things that in your products that you are avoiding, just so that the listeners know, because this stuff is starting to get talked about more. And when you talked about that shaman word, one of your A's was avoid.
Mhm.
So, what are some of those key things that your products don't have, just so that the listeners know, like this stuff, this is clean, and you put a lot of effort into keeping it that way.
Absolutely. So things to avoid, petroleum for obvious reasons, aluminum that you would see in deodorant, no parabens. So parabens in the past were really great for keeping formulas stable. You don't need those. And, we can get stuff from our manufacturer to your home very quickly. There's alternatives to that, like rosemary, lavender. Oftentimes people think lavender is just this aromatic plant. It's actually wonderful antiseptic and also product stabilizer. Vitamin E oils. So you think you have things like paraben and phthalates. Phthalates are also endocrine disruptors. And those are going to come from like your plastics. And so it was very unusual to bring the tins that we have for Green Goo. So we have the glass jars, but we also have the tins. And the reason we brought those tins was because it was the most renewable resource and it didn't have the phthalates leaching. Now, fast forward 10 years later, we have aluminum water bottles now, but we didn't have those before. So it's really fun, talking to my buyers and to my consumers, because at first they were like, why do we have these tins? And we needed something that was portable. But of course, people were using tubes at the time. And I mean, think about how many tubes are going into the landfill and the OTC space. And now there's this connection. We're like, oh, now I understand why the tins were the choice, rather than having plastics. Now it's great. There are some great plant-based alternatives. Our toothpaste now is used with a new material that's sugarcane packaging, which is the alternative to plastic, which is super great. And we're starting to see more industrial alternatives to plastic, but generally speaking, the mainstream stuff that's around us is your traditional plastic that's leaching the phthalates. Um, and I love, what talking about to avoid, which is important. And then also really inviting people to think about what to invite. And the reason I say that is because we're always looking at the transdermal absorption on your skin so that we can think about different products that we can bring and serve people with. And your armpit is one of those. It has like a 70% absorption rate. And when you look at your armpit, it's like really unusual looking skin, right? And so I think one of the first opportunities for people to recognize that what you put on your skin can be dangerous was aluminum and deodorant. But, things I really want to underscore, aluminum is only one of many ingredients that you should be avoiding in your deodorant. There are hundreds of other ingredients that can sneak into your deodorant. But then in addition to that, because you've got this place that's absorbing in such an extreme way, and clearly we know our armpit's unusual, right? Like it offsets odor, it's next to our lymphatic system. Perhaps this is a place where we should be looking at bringing in more nutritive resources. So for us, when we were innovating our deodorant, we added things, adaptogens like holy basil, ashwagandha, reishi mushroom, ginkgo biloba, vitamin C, echinacea, because we're like, hey, if this is absorbing it, well, then let's give it things that it loves. And what we found, which was so fascinating, was that it changes the pH of your armpit. You don't smell anymore because it's not trying to fight something when you're bringing it in things that can help you maintain homeostasis. So it's really interesting to see, even now we think we know so much about the skin. There's so much we're just learning about the skin. And I think we've not discredited or devalued, but I think we've misunderstood our skin for a very long time. It's just the largest organ. It's supposed to protect and shield, our organs and our, bones and all that kind of stuff and our tissues. But we're finding that in the epidermis, there's a lot of activity happening that is interactive with our overall health and wellness. And I tell you what, we call it, we butter up is what we'll say. And we'll put Green Goo on from head to toe and put our bathrobes on at night and just let it soak up. And the next morning, my mindset is different. Like I feel better. And it's like I'm nourishing my, those layers of my epidermis, and it is impacting my overall health and wellness. Like I feel it. It's pretty great.
I love this. I love the thought, the deep thought that you guys have in the creation of these products. And that makes complete sense. I mean, think about all the supplementation that we use and all of these powders and green juices and all of these herbal supplements that we take because we are told that they're supposed to help with XYZ. Why wouldn't you just put it onto your skin, onto some of those areas that absorb it so wonderfully? To be another source of getting that product.
Truly. And I
Yeah.
think we knew something intuitively. Maybe it's a evolutionary trait that when we see someone's skin glow, we're like, oh, they're beautiful. But it's really because we're nourishing our skin and we're healthy. But I think, obviously there's products that I mean, I'll so loosely say prey on, that idea of getting that glow because I think we know intuitively it means that we're healthy and that we're taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking about that, thinking about the marketing, the messaging, and all of these products or companies that are playing and preying on that, how have you been navigating some of the challenges of promoting this plant-based product development in the health and wellness industry? I mean, how have you been pushing forward to make a change?
It has been a very interesting journey. I mean, one, we came into the OTC space where they weren't ready for plant-based. Now, of course, we say the plant-based renaissance is here, but that wasn't the case 10 years ago. And it didn't have the credibility. So we had to be really careful. Like we registered with the FDA, we have our OTC monograph because we wanted people to be informed and educated around the performance of these products. We call the products what they are because originally we had like, this is calendula balm, but we realized people don't know what calendula does. So let's call it dry skin formula so that, hey, this is for dry skin. And then we'll start educating on the plants. Um, but I think it took a couple of different things. One, we had to just keep fighting the good fight. Once upon a time ago, there was the first kombucha company. I always use this analogy because it's like someone was like, what is kombucha? And of course, now there's hundreds of kombuchas, and how do you differentiate? So we had to forge the path for plant-based first aid and stay the course. And I think, wonderfully, our customers are the most incredible like advocates because they get the efficacy and the experience that they're looking for, the symptom relief, and they become our biggest advocates. So that's been wonderful. I do think it took the CBD hemp market to influence the plant-based renaissance to where we are today, where it's more acceptable because, the farm bill passed and, the industry really put a lot of research and dollars behind the efficacy of industrial hemp. And I was at a conference and they had a keynote speaker talking to all of these buyers about, okay, hemp bill is passing. Here's how you can have CBD on your shelves. Here's all the benefits of CBD. Here's how it's extracted. And so they came over to my booth later, the different buyers. I'm like, okay, you know how you had that keynote speaker talking about hemp and how it has CBD, which is a, cannabinoid that benefits us. Well, guess what? There's also naturally occurring CBD in echinacea and black pepper and arugula, but we just don't give it credit. But what they're doing from CBD from the hemp plant is what we do with all of our plants, but it's just not the hemp plant. And that you have this entourage effect with all these like terpenes and chlorophyll and all the beautiful botanical properties that these plants can offer. And I think it really opened up just the general market of being more open to the fact that perhaps plants can work. And I think, because it came the hemp industry came from the THC, the marijuana market, um, the process by which extracting from the plant was brought into this era instead of, a bunch of different kinds of extracts and so forth. So it does change the performance of the plant and how you process it.
That's interesting. Well, let's stick here with the CBD talk because I want to dive a little deeper into that. I know in the work that I do, I've been seeing that CBD time kind of does elude me, so maybe my time frame is off, but I feel like I've been really seeing this huge rise of CBD over the past 5 to 8 years or so. How does CBD really fit into this holistic healing mix? And just maybe talk a little bit more about CBD in general.
Absolutely. I mean, the hemp plant has so many beautiful properties to offer. And I love that there's been more financial support in this space to break down the plant and look at CBG and CBN and CBD and all the different properties, because I think that's going to be the catalyst for more plants and alternative modalities to become available. Um, you know, it was our buyers who came to us that said, "Okay, we trust Green Goo. We would love if you would carry a CBD brand. You're already extracting from plants. Would you do that?" And we're like, "Of course." So Good Goo was born, and that is our CBD line. What I found most fascinating in this journey for me with CBD was seeing the relationship that hemp has with the other plants. So, for example, our dry skin formula that has no, hemp in it was used by John or is used by John Hopkins in their scleroderma and skin condition department for almost 10 years. For scleroderma, eczema, psoriasis. Phenomenal. But once we added the full spectrum hemp to it, it took it to a whole nother level. And so, and I think, the CBD, and I think we'll learn more in the next 10 years as we continue in this plant-based renaissance, is you build up that, we have this endocannabinoid system, which is so cool that we've got this new system that we recognize. But the CBD works with this endocannabinoid system, and it's like it calms it and then lets the other plants work more effectively. And so I think that we're going to find that CBD is going to be a nutritive resource that is important for calming that endocannabinoid system and allowing other medicinal interventions to do their magic. And it's going to be ongoing. So I highly recommend 25 to 50 milligrams of CBD per day, whether it's you're getting it from a topical and or a nutritive resource. I mean, hemp has incredible like omega vitamins and so forth. We have it in our toothpaste, which is great for like plaque control, hardening your teeth, pH, and keeping like the microbiome. I can't say it today. Microbiome microbes under control. Um, and so, I think that hemp is here to stay. And then the beauty of it is we're going to learn so much more about all these other plants. Now, I will say Not all CBD is created equal, and I feel really passionate about that. When, to your point, you said the market was all of a sudden there was CBD everywhere. Well, there was this notion that like the more CBD you have, the better. And no one was thinking about where it was sourced. Well, hemp is awesome, guys, because it cleans our ground. It is an incredible regenerative agricultural plant. But you don't necessarily want that plant to be the one that was cleaning a, call it a toxic site, to be the one that plant do its magic and compost it back in. So you really do want to know where you're getting your hemp from. That is important. And then you also want to know the process. The ethanol or the CO2 extraction, not my favorite process. It pulls some of the medicinal properties from the plant. So those terpenes, the chlorophyll, some of these things that the plant can give you. And now we know that these things have nutritive resources. And so they're adding it back in. So it's kind of like the zombie plant. And so I like to say, do you want the fresh squeezed orange juice or do you want like the powder, alternative that's a mixture of things? And so I'm a big proponent of the lipid infusion process. It's slow, it's protects the integrity of the plant. It brings you all of those nutritive resources. And quite honestly, you don't even need as much like, when they talk about 5,000 milligrams of CBD, when you're getting it in that format, you know, 50 milligrams of it is enough. It's more than enough. And so it's really more of the quality of the integrity of the plant and the medicinal properties that it can serve you.
What are some of the most common reasons of why somebody would wanna gravitate to using CBD in the first place?
Honestly, I think everybody should have it. I think but where, most common is people are going to have chronic pain, chronic skin conditions, and sleep and anxiety. Those are the four drivers. Perhaps we all suffer from them. But at the end of the day, I think we're going to learn that our endocannabinoid system is a more integrative system in our body than we know. And so by giving it what it needs to calm it, it could greatly improve and perhaps prevent. I mean, we don't want to use that word loosely, obviously, but prevent other potential exposures. I mean, have you spent any time with telomeres?
I haven't, no.
This is really interesting. So the telomeres are the end caps to our DNA. And you can study your longevity based on the length of your telomeres. So a lot of people who are interested in biohacking will go and get tested, look at like where are they with their telomeres? Because once they get to a point where they've shrunk so much they unravel, then you have potential exposure to disease. And your skin and your epidermis has a great volume of the enzyme that regenerates your telomeres. So perhaps there's more of a relationship there with your skin, your homeostasis, and your longevity than we have yet to discover.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, as soon as you started saying that, I was like, "Oh, yeah, I did study a little bit of that when I was in physical therapy school." But I completely kind of pulled away and just haven't re haven't thought about that in a while. Anyway, one question that I do have, when I was looking at your products, I noticed that there was a little indicator of how much THC was going to be in the product. Now, I know when I've worked with different people who started to use different CBD products, one of their biggest concerns was, would this become an issue for my job or my work if I ended up getting tested? Because at that point, people were still doing, they still are doing different testing, employers, I mean. So, can you talk a little bit about what people need to know when it comes to the level of THC in the products? Because this does make a difference for some people when they're
Yeah.
choosing products.
So when you're ingesting CBD, if you're someone who is having drug tests or what have you, you want to find a product that is more than likely an isolate, meaning that it's guaranteeing that there are no traces of THC. Now, the federal law is 0.03%. So oftentimes, so for example, the full spectrum that we like to use for topicals, there could be traces of THC when you're extracting from the plant because there's a conversion that can happen during that process that's not being stripped. Now, it always, every batch, in order to even get to the shelf or to be sold, has to go through testing to make sure that it's at that 0.03%. There is no evidence at this time to support that putting it on your skin is going to show up in a drug test. However, um, you know, it's important to be risk aversive, especially if you're in a job where you have those concerns. So the disclaimer is, if you 100% want to know that you would never fail a drug test, then you want to make sure that it says 0% THC. But again, there's been no evidence to support that to this day that the 0.03% in a topical is going to show up in a drug test.
Thank you for clearing that up. Yeah. All
Mhm,
right.
mhm.
Well, psychoneuroimmunology is such a tongue twister. I'm not even sure if I got it completely right there, but it is something that you specialize in. How does it shape your approach to holistic healing at Green Goo?
I think, Green Goo kind of embodies my mom's sister and I in like the fullest sense, right? My sister being an herbalist, a midwife, Ayurvedic practitioner, along with, my health psychology, psychoneuroimmunology, my mom being her love for plants really introduced us to this. And philanthropy and our social impact. We're B Corp, and it's just so important for us to build a company that has impact in all attributes. The psychoneuroimmunology component of it is when we're formulating, we're always just looking at how we can lean in more and say, what more data do we have now today? What more research is available for us to look at this mind body relationship? So, a perfect example is, we were making our free to breathe product, which is a Vicks vapor alternative. And we found that the largest majority of the people using this product were not using it because they had a cold or a cough, but they had this you know, notion that if you put it underneath your feet every night before you go to bed, it would improve your immune system and it would help you sleep better. But they're using a petroleum product that has, some airway openers. Um, but you're not really getting any of those medicinal properties. You're not getting anything that's helping you sleep in your immune system. So my sister and I were like, well, let's put in different herbs. Ravinsara, is an immune booster, different relaxing herbs that help, calm the mind. And then at least we're responding to the consumer's request for this product. And I literally put this underneath my feet now every night before I go to bed. So I get soft feet, but I also like if I don't have it, I will get up out of bed and go find it because I mind over matter. I sleep better with it, And so it helps us from a product development standpoint to be thinking about because we're learning so much more about different essential oils and how they may impact our mind and our body. We have a brand called Southern Butter, which is our sexual wellness brand. And, historically, intimacy has only been focused on the act of having sex and providing a lubricant for it. Well, not everyone, like the act alone is not really what brings people to the bedroom. So we had really so much fun with the essential oils. For some people, it's calming them. So it was like a massage oil that was calming, or another one was an aphrodisiac because sometimes for people getting in the mood, you need to feel a little bit more exotic or stimulating, and sensual. And so it really it there's no way for us to not go into formulating to be thinking about it from that lens versus like you have a cut, here's a product for your cut, and that's the only thing that it will do for you. And it helps not only elevate your experience with a product and your mindset and your home and your relationships, but it also just helps minimize the waste in your home. Like our first aid formula is not just for cuts and scrapes, it's your first aid kit on the go. So you can use it for bug bites, bee stings, chafing, blisters, sunburns. And one, you never knew you needed a first aid kit with you that was portable. Once you have it, you're like that person, like, oh, I got a solution. Here you go. Here you go. And you use it all the time. But then you also eliminate like 10 products in your first aid cabinet and you've got it with you when you actually need it, which is, when the incident actually takes place.
Let's talk about that diversification that you have going on in your whole product line. Now, I first became aware of you. I know I was telling you this before we started today. I first became aware of Green Goo at the Natural Products Expo East. And I've seen so many of the different products that your company does put out. And there is a lot, as you just spoke, there's a lot of diversification. How do all of these brands really align with your holistic healing vision? Like, what are you creating this big bubble to bring together so that it just supports and nurtures the foundation of that holistic healing vision?
Yeah, I'd say our customers really drive the product development in the sense of they're like, well, why don't you carry this? Why don't you make me this? And so then my sister and I will oftentimes go to the drawing board. I mean, that's how Southern Butter was born. Our customers were coming to us asking if they could use our first aid products for intimate purposes. And we thought, well, that's strange. And then friends and family started coming clean. They're like, yeah, we're kind of wondering the same thing. And what was fascinating is when we went into the sexual wellness category, we saw some of the same parallels in first aid, which was the natural consumer was willing to abandon their natural ethos because they were told that these lubricants were the only products that could get the job done. And the conventional consumer was like, I really don't care. I just want something that works better. And here, these products that were mainstream were just pulling the moisture out. I mean, it just gave you a momentary concept of lubrication while also stripping your body of its nutrients. So, what's fun about the Southern Butter is the more you use it, the less you need it because it's hydrating and nourishing the skin. But I see the common thread amongst all of the products is that we bring our process. So, for example, the Southern Butter has all the plant infusions in there. So you're getting the calendula flower for the antifungal, anti-yeast, antimicrobial properties, the hydration from the aloe plant. So we take that process and we bring it across all of the products and having calendula in our toothpaste, for example, aloe in our toothpaste, hemp seed oil, chlorophyll. The chlorophyll is fun because it's like actually green, which is cool when you pull your toothpaste out and it's green. Um, and then sustainability, bringing like the sustainable packaging across the board. So, I'd like to think that, I mean, we're not close to being done with all of the products we would like to bring out to this world. And I love cracking the code of being like, okay, like this is a tough one. Like we have a bug spray that is awesome. And that was a tough one to formulate because you don't want to bring something that's just kind of okay, and the process is really what made this bug spray work because we were like, well, how can we take this infusion that we're doing that we know that, we don't want to mix just a bunch of essential oils and extracts together because it's just gonna dissipate. So we started infusing the witch hazel oil, or it's not oil, witch hazel, and then extracting in that lens so that we could get a high concentration so that it actually would sit on the surface of your skin and your clothing and give you longer protection. Because some of the other challenges we have, called the Industrial Revolution and or other products that have created a perception of what we should have, sunscreen and bug spray are two of the top ones. Like the oxybenzone ring in sunscreen is just such a disservice to humanity. I mean, in this planet, it is so sad that that has entered our supply chain because what it has done to the coral reef, the oceans, it's a carcinogen. But what it has also done is set the expectation that we should be able to spray ourselves with a sunscreen and not get a sunburn for 12 hours and be in the sun all day. Well, the reality is we probably shouldn't be in the sun all day for 12 hours. That expectation is just not realistic. And so, thinking about like our sunscreen only has 7 ingredients, but we're like, you gotta reapply, cover up, get out of the sun after so long. And so, it's interesting in terms of product developing, considering some of the expectations that may have been set, that have really, you know, not been great for us.
Your bug spray, I haven't tried that yet. That's gonna have to be on my
This
list
one,
because I'm constantly looking for one that actually works.
that's pretty great. We
Yeah.
won #1 bug spray by Parent Magazine a few years ago.
Ooh, I love
And
it.
yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
great.
Well, thinking about, again, this diversification, how if somebody wants to start right now in regards to bringing more plant-based elements into their life and into their lifestyle, where would you recommend a few places to start?
Well, some great places to start in your life would be, plant-based deodorant and toothpaste, because those are two things that you're using on a consistent basis. And then for me personally, I love an oil face wash. Have you ever used an oil face wash?
N No, so I've tried 1 or 2, and it did not work for me because I have a very strong combination skin type.
Mm.
However, it could have been the product itself, I will fully admit that.
I highly encourage trying it. It's pretty fantastic. And you got to give it like a week so your skin can kind of balance itself out. It is a wonderful experience of cleaning your skin without stripping it of what you don't want to strip it with, and or strip it from, and also providing nutritive resources. So, for example, the calendula flower being in there with the antifungal, anti-yeast, antimicrobial properties, the lavender, the rosemary. I mean, they're just, it's so hydrating. That I can't live without, along with our repair. So our repair was designed to be an afterburn, burn and scar solution in the first aid space. And what we found, it's an amazing anti-aging formula. And I live in Colorado, like it is so dry here. And so it's just incredibly hydrating, very nutritive, and low maintenance. Like you don't need to have all of this other beauty care. It's just take your oil face wash, have your repair, and you're good to go. So I really appreciate that simplicity, because I think as I spent so many years shopping around trying to find a good face wash and a good moisturizer. And I feel like I was just constantly like, this is okay. I'm going to try something else. This is okay. I'll try something else. Now it's like, I don't know what I would do without these two things. I don't want anything else.
Well,
So I think, and then the sexual wellness too, like,
maybe you
go ahead.
just have answered my next question. This is definitely possible, but how has plant-based elements really made an impact in your own life?
I don't know what I would do without the plants. I mean, it's you just start to, it opens up your world to the possibilities. And whether then all of a sudden you're using them as supplements, you're using them when you're sick, your food. Um, and you just feel amazing. Your energy is high. I mean, you can't deny how it makes you feel. And I feel like my life is simpler. I don't have a lot of the clutter and the chaos, because I can distill from, like, I don't need that. Like, I'm good. So the plants have a lot to offer.
Mhm. I want to shift gears just a bit and talk about the global impact in the future because you have talked multiple times now about some of the sustainability and some of the ethical pieces that you put into this. And I think that it's really important to emphasize that because as we're moving into this new life and this new transition and our world is expanding, we're moving into new times and it's going to demand us to think on a different level. So let's start with Sierra Sage Herbs. Jodi, can you elaborate on the mission of Sierra Sage Herbs, particularly in terms of global impact, passion and innovation?
Yes. So sustainability is at our core. It is how we do our formulating. So whenever we're thinking about the different ingredients that we put in our products, we're not going and selecting items that are, rare and in the Amazon and result in deforestation or, palm oil, for example, that, we know is not good for harvesting and the life cycles and so forth. And so, like, most of our ingredients are weeds. They're just weeds. They don't need a lot of water. The more you harvest them, the more they grow. Um, and so looking at the sustainability factor in terms of those ingredients. And I think, there was this notion that the more rare it is, the better it is for you. And there's so much abundance that's available on this planet that is good for us. Um, and then just the packaging and the process and the sustainability. We're continuously doing our packaging with new innovation just to make sure that it continues to be, the top materials, which is great. And there's more stuff coming, which is phenomenal. I mean, we're finding out that hemp obviously can be a plastic alternative. Mushrooms can be a plastic alternative, and so there's a lot of innovation in the sustainability space that wasn't there before, which is really exciting. But for us personally, uh, and being a B Corp is pretty cool because it's not just about, the label, it's about the education of how you can do better. So every time we renewal, there are additional points that you can take home with you to say, this is how we can do better next year. So great, we passed. That's wonderful. But let's do more. Like, let's lean in more. And so, like our process, we don't, one, it's a waterless infusion process, but then we're also not adding water to the products. And so when you think about like a big bottle of lotion that is being transported from one place to the next, think about not only is that packaging questionable, but it is your carbon footprint for getting that lotion from one place to another. And these little tins of salve, a little bit goes a long way. So your tin of salve could be equivalent to that, big jar of bottle of lotion. But you're not you're you're not having the same footprint as you would be, shipping that around. So we look at it from that lens as well, down to packaging and how it's being bundled and so forth. And it's the time. I mean, we know that we've got to make a big change.
Yeah. Well, okay, so looking at the future and this big change, how do you envision the future of the health and wellness industry? Especially in terms when it comes to embracing more of the holistic approach to well-being.
As I go to Expo West here in a couple of weeks, which is always fun to see the innovation. Um, I think natural products went down a lane of, um, for a while, wanting to make a natural alternative to, like, I don't know, certain chips or, a healthier candy bar for you and that kind of stuff. And what I like seeing now is that we're kind of coming back to our roots in the natural channel of less ingredients is more, um, simplicity of our food sources and how it's serving us and removing some of these other fillers that we don't need. More sustainable, simple packaging expectation, and I really appreciate that. Um, and I hope that it's here to stay. I think that uh it is the root of why natural became natural in the first place, but I did think I got off track for a little bit. And don't get me wrong, I love a healthier chip every once in a while. Like, sometimes you just gotta have that, or your like healthier candy bar. So I'm grateful that they're available. But this whole, like, what Whole Foods stood for in the first place, right? Like, food in its like greatest, fullest, whole sense. So I think we're getting more to that. And, like, I hope it's not too late. I hope we can still grow these beautiful plants and vegetables and the environment's not gonna be so compromised that it's gonna be a challenge. I don't know. I mean, there's definitely some daunting data that's coming
Mm.
out that, we may be forced to have more, modified foods to support. But I'm hoping like regenerative agriculture is really starting to take off. There's more incentives to growing these amazing food products, and the demand is going up. We're making it more equitable. I think what I love about the alternative modalities space, and especially like the psychedelic space, one of the biggest takeaways. Not only are we finding more mental health alternatives, but we're also talking about equitable access. And so like Green Goo is really important to us when we saw a study that said 97% of, the consumers would buy natural if it was organic and if it was
Mhm.
available. And it was like, let's not make Green Goo just for the one percenters. Like, let's make sure that when it's on the shelf, it's comparable to another product. And we never really talk about, medicine being equitable, but because of the indigenous nature of a lot of these psychedelics, it's becoming a fundamental conversation. And so, hopefully that'll permeate across, more access to healthier foods and products that are better for the environment too.
You said something about the availability, and that got me thinking, how can we make it more available to more than just that 1%? Are there ways or initiatives that maybe your company is starting to look at in order to get more hands onto these alternatives rather than just being for a lack of better words, the privileged that are exposed to it?
Yeah. I mean, we are constantly looking at our pricing and our costing. I mean, obviously, our process is expensive. It would be much cheaper if we were just going to go and get extracts. Obviously, that changes the whole mission and vision behind it. So we have to make sure that we're being mindful of other costs. So, whether it is at the founder level, being mindful of our salaries and things to be able to keep that compression down, keeping our costs really efficient. Thankfully, being environmentally sensitive also helps keep costs down when you start looking at like your footprint and so forth. That's been very, very helpful, but being really creative there. And then we've just had to make a, a commitment to keeping our costs lower, which means our profits will be smaller, and that is what it is in terms of being able to, make it more equitable. But there's other things, like, you don't have to have 100 different certifications, like, there's a perfect example of how you can all of a sudden get the cost of your product so high that it's not attainable, to a consumer. So we try to really discern carefully where we commit on those different things, because all of a sudden, if you start saying, "Yes, I want this, and that," you've just doubled the price of your
Yeah.
product. And not to say that they don't have value, because, there's a lot of greenwashing that's out there, and some of these certifications are really important to prevent that. But obviously, like, we're so transparent with our ingredients and our process, some of those things just really aren't necessary in order to have the consumer have those, necessary disclosures.
Mm. Once again, I love the mindfulness that you're putting into this because it makes a big difference. I've seen so many companies where things were so minimal in regards to what might have gone into the production of, but yet the cost was still so high. And I find that frustrating for those who maybe can't afford it, or for those who don't have that ability to obtain that, easily. So anyway, um,
Absolutely.
when it comes to things that you've experienced, and you've been in this for quite some time, when it comes to things you've experienced, people you've talked to, testimonials, clients coming to you, what's your favorite story about a positive impact from this holistic healing approach?
Oh my goodness. I mean, this is like probably my greatest joy out of everything that we do because our customers are just so beautiful in sharing their experiences. And yeah, I have libraries of testimonials that mean the world to me. Um, I'd say one that, oh my goodness, I wouldn't even know where to begin. But what I like about this particular one is a customer that became a friend. And so she was the first person to be pulled from the World Trade Center, Jane Doe number one. And she had horrible, horrible injuries. And she reached out to us because our Green Goo pain relief was the only product helping her through her opioid withdrawal. So fast forward, 5, 7 years later, she was starting to work through reducing her opioids. And and this probably was one of my biggest light bulbs too, just in terms of like the systemic relationship with the concentration of these products. But she sent a request to our customer service asking if we could get her larger volumes made, because she was just buying the jars. And so, thankfully, um, my coworker raised her hand and brought this to us, so we were able to get her, bigger volumes of it. And then we just stayed in communication as she slowly worked her way down to 0 opioids and sent us a picture of her and her family at Disney World with her children and just saying, "I'm doing it. I'm this is amazing." And so we continue to stay in communication, but so beautiful in terms of being able to be a part of one, a very traumatic experience, and then having to go through such a horrible, like horrible experience of the aftermath and being able to be of some sorts of solace, you know, because it was so calming for her. And I mean, it was her go-to. And it was really like we could be cheerleaders for her too. So just like popping in and being like, we're cheering you on, keep going, we're cheering you on, and to have that relationship was really special. Is special. And that's just one of many.
Wow, that story gave me chills. That is incredible. Oh, well, Jody, this has been an awesome conversation, so enlightening. Where can people find you? What's going on in the business right now that you're excited about? And how can people get into your circle?
Yeah, so greengoo.com, great place to just you can find Southern Butter and all of the products there. Learn more about my mom, sister, and myself. What's next? Goodness. We have some fun new products coming. We're going to be working more with other brands as well in terms of bringing more holistic skincare solutions. We're going to be leaning in more on gratitude and mindfulness, and find more ways that we can, serve our customers and that holistic skincare approach that impacts their mind body experience while we're here. So excited to be sharing more here in the coming months.
Ooh, I'll have to keep my eyes open. I can't wait to see. Do you have any last words that you would like to lay on the hearts of the listeners?
Hmm. Oh my goodness. Well, I think we can end where we started, which is the gift of gratitude and how gratitude can serve you in some of the darkest days and give you a little glimmer of hope while also shifting the perspective to the gift and opportunity that's in front of you. And so I guess listeners, find a little way to find some gratitude in your everyday, even if it's how you start your day or how you end your day, and start seeing how it may be improving your life and others around you.
Mm, I love that. Thank you so much, Jody, for being here. And thank you so much for sharing your gift to the world and impacting the world in a deeper way, more than just one person at a time.
Thank you. It's been a real treat to be here. Appreciate